It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Monday, September 2nd, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is continuing to mourn the Gaudreau brothers.
Yeah, it was a very sad day for me.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I'm Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon to get started. You can find us over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, it's been a few days now, but I'm still just shocked and overwhelmed by the loss of Johnny and Matvei Gaudreau. I think that, those of us from the Flyers fandom area and South Jersey, especially, where I grew up, just feel a special attachment to them and this family because it's not often that, a local kid, especially an undersized local kid like Johnny, makes it to the NHL. And yeah, I think that, obviously, outside of the Flames and Columbus fandoms, like it's really hitting our fandom pretty hard.
Yeah, it just the whole area. I mean, I only lived 20 minutes from that road and close to where he lived, so I've been on that road, and so that kind of hit me. I was actually driving, believe it or not, to go visit my mother's grave in New York when I heard this news. So it was already a bad day, and it just made it worse. Um, because he's been in the area, like he played in the Frozen Four in 2014 at the Wells Fargo. So him and Maddie were both in that. I covered that whole series. That's when Shane Gostisbehere and Union won.
Right.
But that was a big moment for him because he was able to shine in front of the local fans. I would see his dad. I over the years I would go to Hollydale rink, which is close to me, and he ran that rink for a long time. So
Yeah.
I didn't know his dad. I never interviewed him, but I'd say hi to him. Like I just didn't feel the need to bug him. But I will tell you this: every time um, Johnny was in town, he would always interview at practice, always interview after the game. He knew there was going to be a lineup of reporters. Did it every time. It always was right before Thanksgiving, so he would always be there with his family at Thanksgiving, and it just became like a yearly thing. And he was just always so gracious with that, and always embraced it, always, gave everybody the time. So that was something you'll remember, everybody remembers. I also wrote an article on Sportsology in 2019 about like the best draft values of the decade and included him and I have to give like Todd Button and the Calgary crew a lot of credit because back when he was being considered for the draft, there were a lot of people that just said he's just too small, he can't make it. Too skinny, too
Yeah.
small. And they didn't believe that. And so, Calgary gets a lot of credit for that.
They absolutely do. And I think, a lot of people were dubious about him going to Calgary
Mhm.
in the first place, just because it was an odd market for a
Yeah.
guy like him to show up in where, he was definitely an American's American hockey player, first
Yes.
off. And, had been so successful in college, but like, was that going to work in a more sort of traditional hockey market like Calgary? And was he going to get the opportunities? And my one of my personal favorite memories of him is scoring that first goal in his very first NHL game. Just I know there were a lot of us in New Jersey and the Philadelphia area who tuned in for this meaningless end of season Calgary Flames game just to get to see his first NHL game.
Right. I remember there was a lot of talk that maybe the Flyers would get Goudreau before he signed on with Columbus, and that would have been something. Like that's
Yeah.
something we know that he wanted, and it just didn't happen. Uh, But Columbus really embraced him, and I give those
Yeah.
fans credit. They're really, the outpouring there is amazing.
Yeah, I think that's also what's been so great is both fandoms really did embrace him, and I own a Calgary Flames Johnny Gaudreau jersey because it just he was that guy for me, and all the stories coming out about him now that everybody knew but didn't. He's one of many stars in the league, and so you don't hear all the stories on a regular basis, but just how great a guy he was, and the kindness and being forthright, and like you said, being present with the media and doing interviews and always being available, and but also the goofy stories about him like making weight by shoving pucks down his pants. Like
Yeah.
I think that he just seems like one of the best friends you would ever have.
Yeah, no question. And I think it really hit Columbus hard because remember Matisse, and I'm not going to try and pronounce his name, the goalie that
Yeah.
passed away. That's not that long
Yeah,
ago.
that's
And so
no,
that's something that
just brutal.
yeah. So they've really been through a lot, the Columbus fan base. And I know that they had to have had thoughts with that because I know just talking to people who cover the team, they had thoughts of that. And now they had to process this. So it's hard. It's hard even just for people covering the team. Like it affects everybody.
Yeah, and just adding Maddie into the conversation a
Yeah.
little bit. Over on Locked On NHL, our friend Gil Martin, who hosts the Monday show there, along with the Friday show with me on Fridays, but he did a crossover with AJ Black of Locked On Boston College, talking about the two of them in their college days and how much an impact they had on the campus there and the hockey program, and how the two of them together kind of helped recruiting. They, had jumped ship from elsewhere and went to BC, and as kind of a almost like a package deal in a lot of ways. And just the energy from his time there, and AJ thinks they're absolutely going to do something special to honor them at BC this fall.
Oh, I believe they will. Yeah. There's no question. They did have a big impact and big just yeah, it just, it's tough. But at least, if you look at the bright side, he did get to play with his brother. He was good enough that he probably didn't have to be there to play with his brother, but he wanted to.
Yeah,
So he did.
yeah.
And I that had to be great for them. And so at least you could look they that's something we all could look back on and say, yeah, that's something that I'm sure they loved. So yeah, it's going to take a long time. It just is. It's one of those things that we all knew him, and we all felt like we knew him, and that's what makes it hard.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think, you look at Matthew as well. He spent some
Hmm.
time with the Reading Royals
Yep.
in the Flyers system, so there is like a connection there just beyond the South Jersey thing, and a special place in the Flyers organization's heart for him as well. And then just to see the continued outpouring, not just from the hockey community. That's the thing that, I mean, obviously the circumstances were just like nightmare fuel, but the greater sports community,
Yeah.
uh, honoring him and moments of silence, and like baseball and
Hmm.
football and soccer, man, watching the Columbus Crew in Major League Soccer, their tribute to him, you know, same city, same fan base. At the 13th minute of their match, they cheered for him. And there was a moment of silence in the men's Olympic qualifiers tournament, which we're going to talk about a little bit later in the show. All the flowers from fans at the arenas in Columbus, Calgary, and in South Jersey, over at Gloucester Catholic. And just, all of the supporters have done, and the GoFundMe for Maddie's family, and it's just been astounding in a lot of ways, what the response has been.
Yeah. No, there's no question. It's been tremendous, and um, the he did represent the US, so I could see why they would do that. And yeah, he played in one, two, three, four world championships, the world juniors. With the world juniors, he had 9 points in 7 games. He was a star
Yeah.
then. So yeah, he represented, his country a lot. So it's nice to see that they were able to do that. And he checked off a lot of boxes in his career. Like, you know, we probably didn't give him enough credit for all the things he had been able to do in his career. I mean, it's really accomplished. Forget about his size. I don't like to even talk about that because that became irrelevant the minute he got in the league, and you could see that he was a star, right? So he was a star in college. If you weren't watching, that was the whole thing. I knew he was a star in college, so people should have realized he was a star in college, and this would
Yep.
carry over. But yeah, he player of the year in the NCAA 2013, 14, just all rookie team 2014, 15 in the NHL. One, two, three, four, five NHL All Star games. Maybe that's even six. It's hard to see. The scroll is going. Calder Trophy finalist, bronze medal for I mean he accomplished a lot.
He did, and I think one of the interesting things is that the NHL national broadcast schedule for the U.S. came out like hours before the accident happened.
Yeah.
And Columbus's first game is October 10th in Minnesota, but their first home game is October 15th against Florida. You got to think they're going to bump that up to a national TV game because it wasn't currently in the initial schedule. The first home game for the Flames is October 12th against our Philadelphia Flyers. And, that's a USA Canada deal. So I'm not sure that one will get a national game, but certainly it'll be a highlight in the Canadian broadcast for sure. But you got to think that they'll switch around some national TV stuff for this.
Yeah, I mean, he was Johnny Hockey for a reason, and I would hope that would happen. So we'll see. But yeah, his impact was great, and we're all going to miss him. Both.
Absolutely. And of course, our hearts go out to the entire family and their friends, and been thinking about them a lot over the last couple of days. And yeah, so we're going to try to move on to Flyers talk.
Yep.
Mention the national TV schedule. We're going to talk about that and the Flyers schedule, plus a goalie PTO signing and more. We're going to do that coming up next.
You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. FanDuel has odds for Major League Baseball, the WNBA, soccer, and so much more. I would say right now the Phillies are on a good roll. Met fans are happy that they took care of business against the Braves. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On NHL provides you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day with national experts and local insight on every team in the league. You can find me there every Friday. It's available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. With everything going on, this is like the tail end of Labor Day weekend. We didn't really talk much about our Friday show that we did put out about the CBA and what the next contract negotiation could look like. So if you haven't listened to it, now is a good time to go back and do that. We get into the nitty gritty of the contract and the sticking points and all that. We will be answering your mailbag questions on the Wednesday show, so get them in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com, send us a message on Twitter, or comment on our YouTube channel. The national TV schedule is out, of course. The Flyers have 14 games this year, which I think, may not have been the original number that was on the calendar. I think that it probably was a one or two less at least before Matvei Michkov signed and came over. What do you think? Did that give the Flyers a bump national TV wise?
Yeah, I think there's a Michkov effect there for sure. I think that definitely added to it. But again, there's a pro and con now to being on the national TV
Mhm.
broadcast schedule. Sometimes you don't want it anymore as a fan.
Yes and no. I think, obviously the more games that are on national TV, the more you end up having to pay out with like different streaming services or whatever
And not
to
everybody pays it. Like
get,
sometimes people just miss
yeah.
the games. I could tell you, I've run into so many people that just don't watch the Hulu games. They just like, nope, not going to do it.
Yeah, or don't watch the TNT games
Yeah,
because, you know, they have Fubo or something that doesn't have the Turner networks on
right.
it. So I get it. It's really hard to cobble together an entire package. It's the way of the world in sports broadcasting right now, and I do not
Well,
enjoy
I
that
think it's more
aspect.
this sport. I think it's more this sport.
Football is pretty bad too, with
No,
like
no, no,
all
but
the
they're
way it's
not
carved.
as bad. Like if you know you're on Sunday night, Thursday night, or Monday night, you're going to get those games because most packages are going to have the NFL Network
Right, but don't they have like
and
Amazon
ESPN.
Prime games and
Yes,
like,
they those are the additional ones. But I'm just saying
yeah.
the Mondays, Thursdays, Sunday, you're going to get all those if you just have two networks on a cable or otherwise on a package. Yeah, and yes, you can include Amazon in that, and that's fine. But I'm just saying the NHLs are so many now; it's very fragmented.
Yeah, so there's 4 games that are exclusive to ESPN Hulu, that are not on the ESPN network. They're just on ESPN Plus. So yeah, if you want to be a completionist with this, it makes it a little bit challenging. But I think that you know, to me, it's maybe a game or two more than I would have liked on the national schedule. Again, from a visibility and from a complexity issue of figuring out where the broadcasts are overall. But we're going to ask you a little bit about that later in the show. Just in terms of the national TV broadcast in general, this is just the U.S. Let's be
Right,
clear about that. But they're doing their usual ESPN triple header now to start the season
right.
on October 8th. They're going to have the banner ceremony in Florida. The first Utah home game is going to be that night. That I think will be a really solid night of NHL broadcasting.
Yeah, definitely will. I mean, I think there'll be people watching, especially for that Utah game, just to kind of see what's different. Although I'll be honest, I don't think those uniforms are going to show up very well on TV. I just don't.
Well, we shall see
I
on
know.
October
I mean,
8th.
I don't love the lettering and the numbering on them, so I don't know.
Yeah. Well, actually, we'll see earlier because they'll have
Yeah,
preseason
yeah,
games.
yeah, yeah.
But um, you know what I mean. But we'll have the TNT night the day
And
after.
here's something else that I want to
Yeah.
bring up. Uh, with the Flyers, with all of these national games, only two are actually on ABC, and
Yeah.
and
That's
they're
right, though.
12:30, but they're 12:30 games. Like
Yeah.
again, a lot of
That's the
fans don't like those 12:30 games, to be honest.
oh, they don't. But that's the deal. The ESPN ABC deal. They don't put games on ABC at all until the spring.
No, no, I
Uh,
get
be-
that, but why? I mean, ABC. I mean, look, is your programming that valuable that you can't have them on later than 12:30? Like, let's be real here.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't. I wish I knew what was behind those afternoon games in March, but in March and April when they start broadcasting
Yeah,
on ABC. But that Saturday game, obviously to end the season, April 12th against the Islanders could be a big deal
could be.
for their last national game. So, and the last 3 national games for the Flyers are against division rivals.
Yeah,
So, I think they're smart about that at least.
yeah, no question. But like, just to give you the contrast, and then on the Wednesday, they push it back to 7:30 at MSG, which I have to tell you, for people in New York, that is tough because if you get up early for a job in New York, that 7:30 almost pushes you over the edge as far as
Well,
whether
you'll
you
miss your train back home, even
Yeah,
though it's in the train station.
yeah,
That limits how you get your train back home if you don't live in this city. That's
yeah.
for
So
sure.
that too. There's all these different facets, but this is what we do as hockey fans. We got to deal with it.
Gotta roll with it. And then I think one of the other little interesting aspects of this national TV schedule, they're doing that big day on October 22nd, like they did last year, which every
Right.
single team is playing.
Yes.
Last year, the Flyers had the very last
Yeah.
start against Vegas, which was a nightmare. It's at 11 p.m. This year, they have the first start at 6 p.m.
I'm thankful for that.
So, but they couldn't just figure out something in the middle.
I'm not looking
Uh,
forward to that 10 p.m. game uh, on ESPN in Edmonton, though. I'm not.
yeah, well, they got to go out west sometime. So
I know.
that's what we do. Um, In the meantime, the Flyers signed a goalie to a PTO, Eto Makaniemi, and he was part of the Sharks organization for a couple seasons, was part of the trade with Brent Burns going to Carolina. And he's a guy that's had a lot of injury issues, so that's why he hasn't really gotten a contract. Doesn't have a ton of games under his belt. Last season, played 18 games in the AHL with the Barracuda, and a few games with Wichita in the ECHL. So only has like 2 NHL games to his name. And this is the guy that you sign to a PTO, right?
Yeah.
Because there's no risk, could potentially get some reward, and then there's a third guy in the competition for the second spot for the Phantoms. That's what you're getting here.
Yeah. And the Flyers don't have enough goalies. Oh, wait, I got to check my notes. No, they have too many goalies. So that makes sense.
They have too many goalies that are not NHL caliber is the issue right now. But no harm, no foul with this. Honestly, giving a guy a shot who's had injuries to see if he can be healthy and perform, I have no problem with this.
So now when Kolosov comes into camp, there'll be 6 goalies.
Yeah. Yep. Listen, this is the world we live in Flyers goalie land right now. So the other small bit of Flyers adjacent news, we had talked about recently potential Flyers that could make Olympic rosters. Well, there
Mhm.
were some qualifiers to fill 3 of the team slots that happened over the last week, and Latvia won Group E, so they will be at the next Winter Olympics. Rodrigo Abels is on that team.
Mhm.
Flyers 2-way contract. He actually had a fantastic end-to-end goal in that game.
Mhm.
And so, we'll see. A really
That's the
interesting
guy I've
development
picked.
there.
I think if there's a guy who has a chance to make that team, it should be him.
Yeah.
Because I've seen him
So,
play before. I mean, it's just, he has a power game. Now, granted, that nice goal that he scored, that's not happening exactly like that in the NHL.
no,
We know that.
no.
But the idea that that's part of his game, though, to do that is what's good. That's the
Yep.
positive. And so that's why I think, he should have a chance. Will he? I don't know.
The Slovaks won Group D. Denmark won Group F. So that's your Olympic lineup with an asterisk next to Russia. We'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I don't know
Uh,
what's happening with them.
yeah, yeah. It is Monday, so we have a new weekly poll for you and a new Nemesis of the week coming up next. So we talked a little bit about the national TV schedule, and it got me thinking a little bit. Do the Flyers get the right amount of attention from the national broadcasters, or respect, or anything related to where they actually are in the stratus of the NHL right now in terms of where they fit in the good team, developing team, what's the conversation around them? And so given that they have 14 national TV games, there's chatter there, but it's not a ton related to some other teams. Do you out there think the Flyers get the right amount of attention respect around the league and on broadcast. Your options are, yeah, it's just about right. No, there's not enough focus on the Flyers, and ending with way too much. The team doesn't deserve it yet. So those are your three options. Of
Wait,
course, if you
is
have
that the
any,
John Tortorella answer? Is that is that what he would say? Is that like a direct quote?
I listen.
It sounds like it, doesn't it?
Maybe he's like influenced me too much when I write
Yeah,
the language
that
for these
sounds a little
polls.
Johnish there. It does.
Could be, but I want to know what y'all out there think. And if you think differently than any of these three options, or you want to give more context to why you picked what you did, please let us know in the comments. Link in the show notes. It's over on our YouTube channel as well. Moving over to our nemesis of the week. Last week, man, I feel like retroactively terrible. I know there's like nothing about it, but I talked a lot about the busy off season and that, the Flyers did more than we would have expected, given that they only had like one or two roster spots to deal with essentially this off season. A lot happened. But it was busy for everyone, and it was busy longer and more consistently over the summer than I think normally it is in terms of bigger deals and trades and offer sheets and all that around the league. So I was like, yeah, anything can happen. Things are crazy. And now I feel terrible about saying that. But nobody could have known.
Yeah.
But I think now that it's officially September, the nemesis for me, I'm starting to get those preseason jitters. What is this team going to look like? And, what is ahead of us for this upcoming season? We're, 2 weeks away from camp starting and getting a real sense of this team. And so I just feel that butterfly feeling, that it's not nervousness, but it's anticipation and like the unknown.
Yeah, for me it's different. The way I look at preseason is I'm there for the prospects. I want to see how the prospects play with the NHLs before they get sent back on both teams. So I'm heavy into that until preseason's over for the games that I go to. And that's really I focus in more on that. But I'll tell you, my nemesis and my dad, who I took the car trip with the other day, is 91 years old, and he had a great point. He goes, "Whatever happened to these big trucks staying in the right lane?" And he's right. Some of these trucks now get into the left lane like they're driving a little Honda. They don't mind cutting you off. They're going 65 miles an hour. Like, I get it. I know it's hard to be a truck driver and you've got deadlines and such, but you can't drive that thing like it's a sports car, and you can't keep cutting in and out of lanes. And I was seeing it. Like, when you're on the road, you see it and it's dangerous. And so, yeah, my dad doesn't really drive anywhere but locally anymore. But he noticed it when he was out on, we're out in the turnpike or out in Queens, and he noticed that. And I got to say, it's worse than it ever has been, and there should be some rules and regulations about that. So that's my beef. I just think these trucks are now, granted, on the turnpike you got the cars only lane, that's fine, but then not every highway has that.
Yeah, I think, I've driven a lot this weekend and up to Buffalo. And so I've gotten a lot of highway time to see all of the bad habits out there. So I can certainly understand that.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, that will do it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. Like I said, we'll have that mailbag on Wednesday's show, so make sure you get those questions in on Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On NHL podcast, where the season never ends, providing national expertise with local perspective. You can find the link to Locked On NHL in the show notes, so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great day.